Ma'am, step away from the vehicle now.
This is my garage, Unit 3B. I'm unloading groceries.
We received a report of a suspicious person.
You don't match the resident description.
What do you mean, officer? My name's on the lease.
Listen.
The garage door was halfway down when the command cut through the concrete, sharp and final, like it had already decided the ending. A woman stood frozen beside her car, one hand still gripping a grocery bag, the other resting on the trunk edge, lights buzzing above her, while strangers with badges treated her home like a crime scene. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from right now. And if stories like this matter to you, please subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Her name was Andrea Collins. She was 46 years old, tired from a long workday, and standing inside the private garage attached to her townhouse. The space smelled of oil and dust. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Her car sat in its assigned spot, engine still warm, trunk open with groceries neatly packed inside. Nothing about the moment suggested danger. Yet 2 uniformed officers stood at the entrance, blocking the only exit. One officer, older, broader, with a stiff posture, kept his hand close to his belt. His name was Officer Cole Harding. The second, younger and quieter, stayed half a step behind him. That was Officer Evan Brooksley. A radio on Harding's shoulder crackled once, then went quiet. Andrea slowly removed her hand from the trunk. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She simply stated the truth. This was her garage. Unit 3B. She was unloading groceries. Harding didn't lower the flashlight pointed at her face. He said a call had come in. A neighbor claimed she didn't look like the person who lived there. No crime was reported. No break-in. Just suspicion. Andrea turned fully toward them. Her keys dangled from her fingers. Her posture was calm, deliberate. She explained again that she lived there, that her name was on the lease, that the parking space was assigned to her unit. Harding stepped closer. His boots scraped against the concrete, loud in the closed space. He asked why she was parked there. Andrea answered simply, because it was her spot. The younger officer shifted his weight. His eyes moved from Andrea to the grocery bags, then to the walls, then briefly toward the ramp leading upstairs. He said nothing. Harding demanded identification. Andrea paused, not out of defiance, but precision. She asked whether she was being detained or free to finish unloading. The question changed the air. It wasn't hostile. It was informed. Harding told her she was being investigated. Investigated for what, she asked. Standing in her own garage. Another garage door opened above them. Footsteps echoed. Someone else was home now. A witness, whether they intended to be or not. Andrea remained steady. She stated that she had a legal right to be there without being treated like a suspect. Her voice stayed even. No shaking. No anger. Just fact. Harding's jaw tightened. Authority challenged often reacts before it thinks. He ordered her to turn around. He told her to put her hands where he could see them. Andrea announced her movements clearly, slowly reaching for her wallet. The flashlight tracked her hand. For a brief second, the beam wavered. At the far end of the garage, a phone appeared. A neighbor stood silently recording. The red light was unmistakable. Andrea noticed. Harding noticed too. The garage door finished closing with a heavy thud. The sound sealed the moment. What should have ended as a misunderstanding shifted into something else. Andrea Collins was not new to pressure. She grew up learning how to stay composed when authority figures raised their voices. Her parents taught her rules mattered, but knowing the law mattered more. She carried that lesson through school, through law school, through rooms where she was often the only black woman and always the most prepared. She worked in law for decades. She learned to measure words. She learned that calm unsettles people who expect fear. That night, she used those skills without announcing them. Harding interpreted her calm as resistance. He stepped in close and reached for her arm. Andrea stated clearly that she was not resisting. Metal closed around her wrists. The sound echoed off the walls, loud and final. The cuffs were tight. Too tight. She tested them slightly. They didn't move. The younger officer looked away. Voices rose from above. Someone said this was wrong. Another asked why she was being treated this way. Harding ignored them. Andrea was guided forward, past her car, past the open trunk, past groceries still waiting to be carried inside. Each step felt deliberate, controlled. Before being placed in the patrol car, she asked the witnesses to keep recording. Everything. The back seat was hard plastic. The door closed. Silence replaced noise. As the car pulled away, Andrea stared straight ahead. Her breathing remained slow. Her mind was already organizing events into sequence. Time. Actions. Witnesses. Evidence. In the front seat, Harding didn't speak. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. He replayed her question, her warning tone, her lack of fear. They arrived at the station just before 9. The building smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Normal sounds filled the space. Phones, laughter, life continuing. At the desk, her name was entered into the system. Everything stopped. The officer behind the desk looked again, then again. His posture changed. A supervisor was called. Andrea stood quietly, wrists cuffed, eyes forward. When the question came about her employer, she answered without hesitation. Department of Justice. Civil Rights Division. The room shifted. The cuffs came off moments later. Red marks circled her wrists. An apology followed, careful and measured. Andrea gathered her belongings and walked out without celebration, without anger. This night was only beginning, and for everyone involved, it would not end quietly. Outside, night air met her skin as doors closed behind her. Somewhere, a report was being written. Somewhere else, a video was uploading. The garage was empty now, but consequences were already moving, fast, and impossible to stop once truth reached daylight everywhere. Andrea Collins did not sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table long after midnight, wrists still faintly sore, a glass of water untouched beside her. The house was quiet, but her mind wasn't. She replayed everything with surgical clarity. The angle of the flashlight, the wording of the commands, the exact moment the handcuffs closed. She wasn't reliving it emotionally. She was documenting it mentally, the same way she had done for hundreds of cases involving other people. By morning, the video was already spreading. It started with one upload from a neighbor. No caption beyond a single sentence saying it happened inside their building. The clip was shaky at first, then steady. Viewers watched a calm black woman explaining she lived there. They watched officers ignore her words. They watched control replace logic. By breakfast, it had thousands of views. By lunchtime, hundreds of thousands. Andrea learned about it from a colleague who texted her a link with one line beneath it. "Is this you?" She clicked. She watched once, then again. Then a third time with the sound off, focusing only on body language. She noted when Officer Cole Harding stepped closer, when his shoulders squared, when the younger officer hesitated and looked away. None of it surprised her. It matched patterns she'd seen for years. By mid-morning, local news picked it up. By afternoon, national outlets followed. Headlines didn't exaggerate. They didn't need to. Woman arrested in her own garage. Mistaken detention caught on camera. Civil rights attorney handcuffed at home. Andrea hadn't told anyone at work yet. She didn't need to. The internet had done it for her. Inside the police department, the mood shifted fast. Officers watched the video on their phones in silence. Supervisors replayed body camera footage behind closed doors. Calls were pulled. Logs were reviewed. Every step that should have stopped the situation earlier stood out in painful detail. Officer Harding was instructed not to report for patrol. His badge and weapon were logged into evidence. He sat at home, blinds closed, watching commentators dissect his decisions frame by frame. Each replay made his chest tighter. He told himself it was a misunderstanding. He told himself he was following procedure. But the words sounded thinner every time. The younger officer, Even Brooksley, was questioned separately. He answered carefully. He admitted he felt the situation slipping. He admitted he should have spoken up. He didn't argue when he was reassigned to desk duty pending review. Andrea met with attorneys the next day, not because she needed guidance, but because procedure mattered. They built a timeline from minute one. They matched video timestamps to radio traffic. They pulled training manuals and policy language. Every claim the officers made was measured against written rules. The lawsuit was filed within the week. It was direct. It named names. It laid out constitutional violations without emotional language. Unlawful detention. False arrest. Equal protection violations. Failure to de-escalate. Failure to verify residency. Each claim supported by evidence. Each paragraph clean and precise. The city responded faster than expected. Not with denial, but with silence. No press conference. No defense statements. Their attorneys requested extensions, then meetings, then more meetings. Behind closed doors, officials understood the problem. This was not a case they could win. The video was too clear. The plaintiff knew the law too well. A trial would expose more than one incident. It would invite scrutiny into years of similar stops that never made headlines. Settlement talks began early. Andrea didn't attend the first meetings. She didn't need to. She focused on her job. She reviewed other cases, other complaints, other videos that looked uncomfortably familiar. This time, though, her colleagues watched her more closely. They didn't ask how she was feeling. They asked how she was documenting. When the settlement offer came, it was significant. Enough to make headlines if released. Enough to require city council approval. Andrea approved it with conditions. Full release of all footage. Policy revisions. Mandatory retraining. No confidentiality clause. The city agreed. Officer Harding's disciplinary hearing followed. His record was examined with new eyes. Complaints that once seemed minor now formed a pattern. Language that had gone unquestioned now raised alarms. The final decision came quietly. Termination for conduct violations and constitutional breaches. His appeal was denied. Brooksley received discipline and mandatory retraining. His supervisors noted his hesitation on camera, his failure to intervene. His career continued, but with a permanent mark. The department announced reforms. New verification procedures. Clearer rules on detentions. Public statements about learning and accountability. Some applauded them. Others called them too late. Andrea released a single statement. She said the case was never about money. It was about precedent. She donated the settlement to civil rights organizations and legal aid groups. She returned to work without ceremony. Months passed, but the video never disappeared. It resurfaced in trainings, in classrooms, in discussions about bias and power. It became a reference point, not because Andrea was a high-ranking attorney, but because she was treated the way many others had been without cameras. People asked her if knowing the law helped. She answered honestly. It helped later. Not in the moment. What happened in that garage followed a familiar path. Assumption replaced inquiry. Authority resisted correction. Escalation filled the space where listening should have been. Andrea continued her work with added clarity. She reviewed cases knowing firsthand how quickly rights could be ignored. She asked sharper questions. She demanded cleaner answers. The garage incident didn't change who she was. It confirmed what she already knew. Systems don't fail loudly. They fail quietly, one decision at a time. The aftermath settled into a strange routine. Andrea Collins became both participant and observer in a system she had studied for most of her life. At work, she reviewed cases that mirrored her own experience with uncomfortable accuracy. At home, she noticed how neighbors looked at her differently now, not with suspicion, but with recognition. Some nodded quietly. Others avoided eye contact, unsure what to say. The garage returned to normal. Cars came and went. Doors opened and closed. The fluorescent lights continued to buzz. Yet the space no longer felt neutral. It carried memory. Andrea avoided it for weeks, choosing to park on the street instead. Not out of fear, but control. She refused to let a concrete room dictate her comfort. Inside the police department, the incident changed conversations. Officers spoke more carefully. Supervisors emphasized procedure with unusual seriousness. Body camera footage was reviewed more often. Training sessions included uncomfortable pauses where no one volunteered to speak. The video was played without commentary. Silence did the work. Officer Cole Harding's absence was felt. Some defended him quietly, framing his actions as caution. Others didn't defend him at all. They had seen the pattern before. They had just never seen it end this way. Even Brooksley struggled most with the quiet. He replayed his hesitation over and over. He remembered thinking the stop felt wrong. He remembered telling himself it wasn't his call. That silence followed him into every shift. Retraining sessions forced him to confront that moment in detail. He learned that failure to act was still a decision, one he would carry. Public reaction moved in waves. Outrage surged, then settled into discussion. Articles examined legal standards in plain language. Commentators explained reasonable suspicion, unlawful detention, and why being calm did not obligate compliance beyond the law. The story became educational, not just emotional. Andrea was invited to speak at closed-door sessions. Not on panels, not on stages. In rooms with policymakers and senior officials. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She described exactly what happened, step by step, and asked a simple question each time. At what point should this have stopped? No one answered immediately. She emphasized that her credentials were irrelevant. That night, she was just a black woman unloading groceries. The outcome shouldn't depend on titles. Accountability shouldn't require cameras. In private moments, Andrea processed the personal cost. The night still surfaced in small ways. A sudden command on television. The echo of boots on concrete. The sound of cuffs clicking in movies. Andrea never spoke to Harding again. She didn't need closure from him. Accountability had already arrived. What mattered more was preventing the next incident, the one without a high-ranking attorney, the one without witnesses, the one without a viral video. She returned fully to using her garage. Each time she parked, she noted the normalcy of it. The mundane act of carrying groceries inside. The absence of confrontation. The quiet. It mattered to reclaim that space. The public eventually moved on to newer stories. Outrage cycles shifted. But the video never fully disappeared. It resurfaced whenever similar incidents occurred. Commentators compared. Lawyers cited. Activists referenced. It became part of a larger record. Andrea accepted that role without embracing it. She remained focused on systems, not spotlight. When asked what the incident taught her personally, she answered simply, "That rights are fragile in practice. That authority must be questioned early. That silence helps harm spread." The younger officer, Brooksley, continued his career with visible caution. Colleagues noticed he intervened sooner during stops. He asked clarifying questions. He slowed things down. It wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. That mattered more. For the department, trust rebuilding was slow. Community forums were tense but necessary. Listening sessions replaced scripted statements. Some residents returned. Others didn't. Healing, like accountability, could not be rushed. Andrea watched these developments with realism. She did not expect transformation. She expected effort. Consistent, documented, measurable effort. The garage incident became a case study not because it was unique, but because it was typical. Typical assumptions. Typical escalation. Typical disregard for explanation. What made it different was interruption. Cameras. Knowledge. Refusal to be silent. That combination is rare. Andrea often thought about people without it. People stopped on sidewalks, in parking lots, in hallways. People whose names never trended. People whose stories ended quietly. That awareness fueled her work. It sharpened her resolve. It reminded her why precision mattered. Why documentation mattered. Why calm resistance mattered. Years from now, the specific details might fade for the public. The names, the location, the viral clip. But the lesson would remain embedded in policy language and training slides. Authority must justify itself, every time. Andrea Collins did not become a symbol by choice. She became one by standing still in her own garage and refusing to accept a false narrative. That refusal traveled far. The concrete walls returned to silence. The lights continued to hum. Life resumed its ordinary rhythm. But somewhere, an officer paused before escalating. Somewhere, a supervisor questioned a report. Somewhere, a resident felt seen. Those were the real consequences. The story ends not with resolution, but responsibility. Responsibility to question, to record, to speak clearly, to listen. Because justice does not announce itself. It has to be insisted on, even in the most ordinary places.